This is a letter from a former Montana state senator and our dear friend and a fellow worshiper at Liberty Fellowship Online. He wrote the senators and the representatives of our current legislature this letter. I asked him if I could have permission to share it with you and with all of you online, and he gave me that permission. Those of you that live in Montana, listen up. Turn the volume up. Very important. Senators and representatives, the most important and critical legislative need is the protection of the people. Amen. The right to life, liberty, and private property is, without a doubt, the most serious of human protections given to us by the Creator. Please note the first, the right to life. I submit to you all that there is nothing more important than that. Not supporting or opposing a convention of states, not supporting or opposing growing government issues, not supporting or opposing fish and game issues, not raising or lowering taxes, not bending to lobbyist demands or any of the other time-consuming issues during the session. It is my understanding, correctly so, that there is a reluctance among legislators to sponsor the personhood amendment. And he's correct. We do not have a single sponsor for the personhood amendment, not from any Republican in the Montana legislature in 2023. I ask, why not? Should not the people of Montana get a chance to have their say? One day, we are all going to stand before the King of Kings and give an account for our actions or inaction. What others think is nothing compared to what He, capital H, instructs us to do. Along with obedience to Him comes protecting the least of these, in quotes. We must consider how all of us are going to respond to Him if we neglect the protections of the innocent. As for me, I have no intention of being in a position of attempting to justify myself before the ultimate judge. If no one stands for God's creation in the womb, who will? We may wonder why this nation is morally and spiritually corrupt. I submit it is due to disregard of killing or mutilating of innocent children in and out of the womb. You get my point. One or all of you ought to step up, be bold, stand on the principles of God's Word, and sponsor this bill. Everything else pales into insignificance. You have the opportunity. Now is the time. Do the right thing. Greg Hinkle, State Senator 2008 to 2012. The reason that we do not have a sponsor for the personhood amendment is because the House Speaker, Matt Regier, is not putting his support behind it. He's holding it up. In short, he's playing politics. Now, Matt, I don't know if you watch Liberty Fellowship or not. If you're watching, I want you to know, sir, everybody in this congregation and everybody for the most part that I'm speaking to around the state of Montana has supported you and every member of your family ever since we've known you. We have voted for you over and over again. We believed that you were a man of truth, a man of principle, and a man of conviction. We believed you when you told us you are pro-life. We believed you when you told us you are pro-Second Amendment, when you are pro-limited government, etc., etc. Now, the people that put you in office in the Flathead Valley have two issues of which they will never surrender, compromise, or back down from. And those two issues are the right to life and the right to keep and bear arms. Those two issues stand above all of the other political issues that you are ever going to face in your tenure as a representative of the people of Montana. For years, we've heard Jess Laszloffy, who is controlled opposition, who tells us, well, we shouldn't pass the personal amendment because it doesn't have a chance, or we shouldn't vote for it, it doesn't have a chance to pass. We don't have a Republican in the governor's mansion, and he's going to veto it, and we don't have enough people in the legislature that are going to support it. We got too many Democrats that are going to oppose it, etc. Now, sir, the Republicans have a super majority in the legislature and a Republican governor in the governor's mansion. In other words, the Republicans of Montana control the entire state government of Montana. You have an opportunity that you have never had in your political life and may never have again to pass personhood in the state of Montana. And I know what you're thinking. You know that if you pass personhood, Montana is going to be descended upon by the left-wing liberal media from all over the country. They're going to pounce on you and your fellow Republicans that voted for it. They're going to call you every dirty name in the book. They're going to try to make your life a living hell. You know what's coming if you vote for personhood, and you are intimidated by the national media. Sir, your convictions and your principles should cause you to do the right thing regardless of the opposition. And you should know that when personhood passes, all of your constituents that voted for you in this state, especially the Flathead, you're from the Flathead, are going to stand behind you with everything they have. They're going to be right there fighting with you. Plus, you should know that there are hundreds of pro-life attorneys around the country that some of them will come to your assistance. There are pro-life organizations all over the country that will come to your assistance. This will become the battleground for the future of the unborn children for the entire country. And God has given Montana the opportunity to be the tip of the spear in the fight for the saving of the lives of unborn children. How dare we not seize this opportunity? I think I'm speaking for the people in this room and for a lot of people in the state that if this session comes and goes and Matt Regier, Speaker of the House, does not push this personal amendment through, you know you could get this done that quick. All you have to do is give your consent. All you got to do is say, I want personhood amendment, and it's going to happen. You know that the ball is in your court. You know you have that kind of authority and power and influence in the legislature. If this legislative session comes and goes, Personhood is not voted on. We will have forever lost the respect and the admiration that we had for you. And in spite of what we thought, and in spite of what you have told us, you will have proven yourself to be just another politician. We're not looking for politicians. We didn't vote for you to be a politician. We are looking for statesmen who will stand for what is right regardless of cost. And sir, we are pleading with you to do the right thing, and all of the other Republicans in our legislature to step up to the plate and show the world that the people of Montana are tired of the legal butchering of unborn babies. We want it stopped. The second announcement I have to make is strictly personal for Liberty Fellowship. And I wanted to make this announcement with the online family and not just for the local family, because it impacts all of us. So the hotel where we have met for 11 years is now under new ownership. They have done a beautiful job redecorating the hotel. So we got a notice last week that they are raising our rent over 2.5 times. I'll just tell you, the total rent for this hotel will now be over $100,000 a year. I had a meeting with one of the owners this past week. I was told that there are 4 owners, and the lady we spoke with was one of those owners. My purpose in meeting with her was not to negotiate price, as much as I feel the price was unwarranted. We all know that prices are not what they used to be. We all know the cost of living has escalated exponentially post-COVID. We deal with that with everybody we hire. Even when you go to the store to buy a dozen eggs, if you can find a dozen eggs. And you people that got chickens and are growing your own eggs, you guys were ahead of your time. So I understand price increases are necessary, and I don't have any qualms with that. I think it was excessive. But that's not what my purpose was in meeting with her. My purpose was to see, if she had any understanding of Liberty Fellowship, any knowledge of who we were, and our record here at the Hilton. And that answer came very quickly. She did not. She knew nothing about us. Absolutely nothing. That being discovered, my motive was to try and help her understand the relationship that we've had with Hilton and the asset that we have been to this hotel. Not only have we tried to be the best of guests, not only have we paid our rent on time every month for 11 years, not only have we tried to do what any proper guest would do, take care of the owner's property and treat it as we should, as we would want our own property treated. And we have spent 11 years building up a credible relationship with the former owners of this hotel. So much so that they even went to bat for us, as you know, during the last 2 to 3 years. Beyond that, I wanted her to know that throughout the course of a year, scores and scores of people will come and visit Liberty Fellowship, and many, if not most of them, will stay in this hotel. So not only are we paying Hilton our monthly rent, but the people that come from all over the country, and other countries sometimes, that stay here are also increasing the revenue for this hotel. In 2021, in January, when we had our 10th anniversary celebration, we generated somewhere around $40,000 in additional income to the Hilton Hotel in the deadest month of the year, when the hotel was virtually vacant. We were able to help the hotel in that way during that period of time. And I went over everything. I wanted her to appreciate the value of Liberty Fellowship. We have promoted the Hilton brand over this camera for years. We've had people write us and say, we will stay at the Hilton when we go to Chicago or we go to Dallas or wherever, because of the way they were so good to you in Kalispell. That, of course, cannot be tracked. There's no way we can know how many hundreds of people stayed a night at the Hilton in some location because of our accolades for this hotel. That was my purpose. And all I can tell you is, it was like talking to that wall back there. Not one time did she express gratitude for the 11 years that we have been here and the faithfulness we have had in trying to be a good renter and be a good promoter of our host. Not once was there a thank you for that. Nor did she seem to have any appreciation at all for anything I was saying about our fellowship being anything of value. We are a monthly check. And that's basically it. So, and because of the increase in price, we've had to cut back some of our expenses. We had to take out one of the rooms that we used, and we had to cut back one of our children's classes, which requires another room. We had to do that. So those are the first two things that we did to try and alleviate a little bit of the expense. So the point is that our future with Hilton is uncertain at this point. It's uncertain in my mind. I mean, even if we can make the payment long term, which that's yet to be seen, even if that's off the table, I realize at any moment, like come May or June, she could come and say, oh, you know what, now we're in summer months rates, and boom, there goes your rent again. Because they wouldn't sign a contract. It's just what they say for the month, that's what it is. But the biggest thing is to not recognize the value that we have brought to Liberty, to the Hilton, and to not appreciate what we have been and what we are today. In my opinion, shows an individual that has a total disregard for basic humanity and character. When you start dealing with people that the only thing they know to do is count beans, then you're not dealing with a human being. You're dealing with a robot that only sees dollars. And we realize that that's the way most major corporations are. But to be honest with you, I've never met anyone that had the audacity that would not even give tacit recognition to this guest that has proven themselves so faithful for so long and so generous and brought in so much extra income to the hotel and not even recognizing it. So this is more than just, can we pay the rent? Yeah, we're going to pay it until we do something else. If and when we decide to do something else, we're going to pay it. The issue to me is trust and appreciation. And if we cannot have a relationship of trust and appreciation, I don't want the relationship. So I'm letting you know short term that you can do a couple things for us online. You can pray, of course. And if you are not tithing or giving, it was sure helpful at this time if you would. I don't stand up here, as you know, and beg for money. At the end of the service, I thank people for giving. I share with them how they're able to give, but I don't get up and beg for money. Most preachers are always begging for money for something. I don't do that, and I'm not going to do that now. I am saying, I've told you the cost increase, and if God speaks to your heart, if you need to start giving and help us, if you're not already doing that, they would appreciate it if you would. The second thing is, and this is short term, I'm going to be preaching prophecy message number 9 in 2 weeks. Correct. Chapter 9 of Revelation, prophecy message 13. In 2 weeks, which is February the 19th, correct? Correct? So 2 weeks from today, February 19th, I'll be preaching prophecy message number 13 from Revelation chapter 9. It's part 2 of the siege, and the title is The Demons Arrive. The Demons Arrive. That's the title of the message of Revelation chapter 9. So that'll be in 2 weeks. I know this is short notice. And I also know that the vast majority of you that are watching could not accommodate this. You're not in a position to be able to do this. So I'm talking to the very few people that would be in a position to be able to do this. I'm asking you to consider if you can afford the time and if you can afford the expense, whether it's driving or flying. If at least a handful of you would be here for that message, that next prophecy message, number 13, in 2 weeks on the 19th, and stay here at the Hilton and just give a personal, practical illustration to the Hilton management of what I expressed to them. Here we are from out of state. And the only reason we're here, or maybe from in-state, but you had to drive to get here. Then the only reason we're here is because we're here to attend Liberty Fellowship, and we're staying at the Hilton, getting the benefits of our stay. If some of you could do that, I believe there at least would be a semblance of exclamation point given to what I told this lady one-on-one in a conference room. This is something that would be a practical follow-up to that might have no impact at all. But on the other hand, it could generate a thought process in the mind that is not currently there. So we would just have to do it and see how God used it. And in the meantime, we're going to go forward. And until you hear something else, we're going to be at the Hilton. But just know that unless things change in some degree, that we will be thinking and praying about options. And some of those options might even be out-of-the-box options. Because this is the nicest conference center in the entire county. There's no place, a small town. This is not like Orlando, Florida, or Phoenix, Arizona. This is it. This is the nicest place with that we could have this comfortable meeting space with plenty of room for our book table and expanding chairs and the platform and a grand piano for Sarah to play. And, it's just ideal. So it's been really great for us being here. And if God wants us to continue to stay here, we will stay here for as long as God wants us here. If the time comes that we feel that we need to find another location, then we will make that known at the proper time. But until then, if you don't hear anything, we're going to stay right where we are. But if a handful of you, if 6 or 7 families of you could come in 2 weeks, check in, let them know you're here because of Liberty Fellowship, it would have some kind of an impression. How much, nobody knows, but it would sure help to underscore what I told this lady who doesn't have any comprehension of what I told her. And so at least that would be a pastor told you so kind of moment. You know what I'm saying? Can I get an amen on that? He wasn't kidding. There is a value to Liberty Fellowship that goes beyond a monthly check. So anyway, that's the story that I had to share with you online, and you pray about it. Come if you can in 2 weeks. If you can't, don't worry about it. Completely understand. It's all in God's hands, and I'm not worried about it. I'm not discouraged. I don't want you being discouraged. I don't want you being down. I don't want you going, oh no. God never takes something from us that He wouldn't give something better to us. Never, never, never. And so we don't second guess God. We accept God's sovereignty, and we will do as God directs. And whether it's stay here from now on or be forced in God's will to relocate, so be it. It'll be good either way. Don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. God's going to take care of Liberty Fellowship. If anything, we need to pray for the owner of this hotel. Because that heart is not a heart that God can bless. And there's a lot of rich people that think they don't need God. And I don't know whether she's one of those or not. But rich people need God too. And God is richer than the richest man to ever live. And He always has the last word on everything. So if anything, we should pray for them. And I don't have any idea about the other owners. I haven't met them, but just met the one. So, okay. So nobody's discouraged, right? No. Nobody's down, okay? Tell me you're okay. Tell me it's all good. All right. All right. Stand just for a moment and stretch your legs. Because I got a 2-hour sermon coming up. Just kidding, just kidding. All right, you may be seated. Open your Bibles with me, please, to the book of 1 Kings. And if there's a Baptist deacon out there, That's located right before 2 Kings. First Kings chapter 22. This is really so appropriate for the days in which we live. I am so grateful to God for providing this message from our heart today. 1 Kings chapter 22. Before I read verse 1, let me just give you a brief introduction. The story is a story about Ahab, the king of Israel, and Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria. And you can read the historical account of that in chapter 20, 2 chapters before this one. In a nutshell, Ahab, the king of Israel, was invaded by Ben-Hadad, king of Syria. Ahab was a wicked, ungodly king, as you know, and Israel was a rebellious and wicked nation. But they were of the house of David. God sent his prophet to tell King Ahab that God would give him victory and that he should destroy Ben-Hadad. Terrible battles were fought. In one battle, Syria lost over 100,000 men. God gave Israel victory over the Syrians. But instead of killing Ben-Hadad, he made a league with him and even let him keep some of Israel's captured cities, including Ramoth, which was a city of refuge. Very spiritual foundation for that city. Trusting Ben-Hadad to honor his word to restore the cities in due time, or maybe even making a deal to profit jointly from Ben-Hadad's reign. And that's probably what happened. Ahab and Ben-Hadad made some kind of a economic agreement. After sparing Ben-Hadad, the power of God sent the prophet of God to meet Ahab returning from battle and rebukes him for disobeying God and sparing Ben-Hadad and not recovering the captured Israeli cities. For this, the prophet is put in prison. Now, verse 1. And they continued 3 years without war between Syria and Israel. 3 years without war. But after this time, the cities still remained under Syrian rule. Verse 2. And it came to pass in the 3rd year that Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, came down to the king of Israel, Ahab, and the king of Israel said unto his servants, Know ye that Ramoth in Gilead is ours, and we be still, and take it not out of the hand of the king of Syria. And he said unto Jehoshaphat, Wilt thou go with me to battle to Ramoth Gilead? And Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, I am as thou art, my people as thy people, my horses as thy horses. So he agreed to go in league with Ahab and fight the Syrians to deliver Ramoth in Gilead. Now, Ahab had gone 3 years. 3 years of disobeying God. 3 years of deal making with the king of Syria. Now, what happened toward the end of those 3 years that got under Ahab's goat, we'll never know. But now suddenly Ahab is itching to go back to war with Ben-Hadad. He invites Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, to ally with him in this war with Syria. Now understand, Jehoshaphat is a godly king, a man who had done much good in Judah, a man whom the Bible said did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, a man whom God was using and blessing. Jehoshaphat was a man of God. Ahab was a man of the devil. And notice Jehoshaphat's foolish pander to Ahab. He said, I am as thou art, my people as thy people, my horses as thy horses. No, you're not. You are a good, righteous man. Ahab is an evil, wicked man. You have the anointing of God on your life. Ahab has the judgment of God on his life. You have nothing in common with Ahab. When good men start pandering and compromising with bad men, the good men always lose. If you go to bed with a skunk, guess what you're going to smell like when you get up in the morning? Now, godly Jehoshaphat is joining with wicked Ahab in an unjust war. The war was just 3 years ago when God directed the war and what God said needed to be done. But now, alliances had been made, treaties signed, brotherhoods established. The time of just war with Syria had passed. Ahab is waging war not because God instructed him to do it for the right reasons. He's waging war for his own purposes, for his own motives. He's selfishly waging war, which is what causes most of the wars that we're fighting today. It's not based upon just war principle. It's based upon somebody in power is going to get richer off of that war. Our American founding fathers were so sagaciously wise when they wrote of the wisdom of not becoming entangled with foreign alliances and not joining in the political affairs of foreign countries. That we should only fight defensive wars to seek a just cause for military intervention. That was the philosophy of our founding fathers. What kind of foreign policy has America had since World War II? Largely, it's an Ahab-esque foreign policy. We make unwise covenants and agreements with nations and even give these nations billions and trillions of dollars in military aid. Then we break our agreements, use our CIA and military to force to remove governments that we helped establish and propped up through vast foreign aid, which almost always goes to the despots in power, not to the people in general. Then we repeat the process by issuing more billions and trillions of dollars in foreign aid to prop up more despots with whom we make more treaties and agreements ad infinitum. That's the cycle that repeats itself over and over ever since the end of World War II. Ladies and gentlemen, that is exactly what our government is doing in Ukraine. That is exactly what we're doing in Syria. That's exactly what we're doing in Iran. That's exactly what we've done in every war we've ever fought since the Second World War. Godly King Jehoshaphat is now being asked to partner with evil King Ahab in his unjust war. Jehoshaphat was a pandering weakling when he said, I am as thou art, my people as thy people, my horses as thy horses. No, he wasn't, and no, they weren't. What is it about so many good people that they are so weak, lacking courage and strength, and compromise with the forces of evil, as if somehow or another they're going to gain something positive? How can good people be so weak? Evil people aren't weak. If they fail at an objective, they don't give up. They don't go home and pout. Oh, well, we tried. I did my best, and we got beat. We better not try again, or we might get beat again. Oh, grow up! These liberal Democrats, they try, they get slaughtered. They lose massively. Do they go in a corner somewhere and sulk? No. They go back to the drawing board and regroup. Well, let's try it again, and let's do it this way, or let's do it that way. And they come back, and we beat them again. And they come back, and we beat them again. And they come back, and they come back, and they come back. They never, never quit. What's wrong with Christian conservatives? If you don't get personhood one year, do it the next year, and the next year, and the next year, and every year until it's the law of the state. Most of our Republican legislators and pastors are just like King Jehoshaphat. They are pandering weaklings. Judah was an independent nation with its own territory, its own laws, its own system of worship, its own borders, etc. They had a common history, but that history was long gone, and new constitutions of government have been enacted. And Judah's government and laws in no way resembled Israel's government and laws. Jehoshaphat was making a grave error. Verse 5, and Jehoshaphat said unto the king of Israel, Inquire, I pray thee, at the word of the Lord today. Jehoshaphat had a spiritual side to him. So he says, okay, let's find a prophet of God, and let's see what God has to say about this. He should have done that, he should have known not to go in league with Ahab regardless. But he should have done this first if he was going to even think about it, instead of saying, we are the same, I am as you are, and you are as I am. But Jehoshaphat had enough spirituality that he wanted to hear from God's prophet. Verse 6, Then the king of Israel gathered the prophets together, about 400 men, and said unto them, Shall I go against Ramoth Gilead to battle, or should I forbear? Should I go to war with the king of Syria or not? And they said, all 400 of them, Go up, go to war, for the Lord shall deliver it into the hand of the king. 4 100 prophets said, go for it. But you got to understand, these are not God's men. They're Ahab's men. And what we have in our pulpits today, by and large, are not God's men. They're government's men. And if you don't understand that, you understand nothing of what's going on. These were paid hirelings of the state. So our churches are today. Tax exemption, tax-induced benefits, government subsidies given to churches. That's all largesse from government. And if you don't know anything else about government, know this: government never gives anything without strings attached. So the strings on the pastor are, you don't talk about this, you don't talk about that, you leave this subject alone, you don't do this. So they are government hirelings. I don't care what they say. They're government hirelings, just like the prophets of Ahab. There's never been a shortage of such men. They sold the truth to receive Ahab's favor. And the vast majority of so-called prophets today have been doing the same thing, up to and including the modern pastors in this country. Here's a hint to all of you on how to tell what kind of pastor you're listening to. If he is saying the same things that the vast majority of the rest of the pastors are saying, he's a false prophet. Verse 7. And Jehoshaphat said, hey, Jehoshaphat had some sense. He was a weakling, but he had some sense. Jehoshaphat said, is there not here a prophet of the Lord besides these, that we may inquire of him? Are these all the prophets you've got? He knew they were lying. He knew they were hirelings. He knew they were working for Ahab. Don't you have anybody in the kingdom besides these? He recognized these were not true men of God. He understood the phony message when he heard it. This is one of the things I'd never have been able to comprehend. How can professing Christians not understand phony messages when they hear them today? How can they not recognize pandering, compromise, appeasement, groveling? How can they not see it? Maybe they do see it, and that's what they want because that's what they are. Verse 8. And the king of Israel said unto Joshua, I love this part. I really do. I just love this part. So Ahab says to Joshua, there is yet one man, Micaiah, the son of Imlah, by whom we may inquire of the Lord, but I hate him. Don't you love that? Hey, if a wicked Ahab hates you as a prophet, you are doing something right. I hate him. This was Micaiah. All right, let me finish the verse. I hate him, for he doth not prophesy good concerning me. He never tells me what I want to hear. He never scratches my back. He never tells me I'm a good guy. He's always telling me something about judgment, And Jehoshaphat said, let not the king say so. This was Micaiah, the same prophet who rebuked Ahab 3 years earlier and had been sitting in prison ever since. Remember the beginning of the message. This is the same one. He's been in prison for 3 years after he rebuked Ahab for what he did in that war with Syria. Verse 9. Then the king of Israel called an officer and said, hasten hither Micaiah, the son of Imlah. And the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, sat each on his throne, having put on their robes, in a void place in the entrance of the gate of Samaria. And all the capital city, and all the prophets prophesied before them, all 400. All 400 of these prophets got up one by one and said the same thing again. Go up, king. Go to war, king. God is with you, king. You're right, king. And Zedekiah, the son of Chenaanah, made him horns of iron, and he said, thus saith the Lord, with these shalt thou push the Syrians until thou hast consumed them. And all the prophets prophesied, I have that underlined, all the prophets prophesied so, saying, go up to Ramoth Gilead and prosper, for the Lord shall deliver it into the king's hand. And the messenger that was gone to call Micaiah spake unto him, saying, okay, now here's what the king's messenger told the prophet in prison. Behold now the words of the prophets. Declare good unto the king with one mouth. In other words, you say what they have said. Let thy word, I pray thee, be like the word of one of them, and speak that which is good. Now, you be a good little boy, and you tell the king exactly what all the other prophets have already told him. And Micaiah said to this messenger, as the Lord liveth, what the Lord saith unto me, that will I speak. He would not even compromise with his speech. Verse 14, and Micaiah said, as the Lord liveth, what the Lord saith unto me, that will I speak. I wanted to emphasize that. Verse 15. Okay, so let's read this. So he came to the king. Now you know this is going to be good, right? I mean, this would be great to be able to see this. And he came to the king, and the king said unto Micaiah, shall we go against Ramoth Gilead to battle, or shall we forbear? Straight up question. And he answered him, go and prosper, for the Lord shall deliver thee into the hand of the king. He was mocking the other the other prophets. He was saying, sure, that's what you want me to say? Sure, go up, like the others have told you to do. And the king said, how many times shall I adjure thee that thou tell me nothing but that which is true in the name of the Lord? Okay, you want the truth? Here it is. And Micaiah said, I saw all Israel scattered upon the hills as sheep that have not a shepherd. And the Lord said, these have no master. Let them return every man to his house in peace. And the king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat, did I not tell thee that he would prophesy no good concerning me, but evil? I told you he had nothing good to say. And Micaiah continued, hear thou therefore the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the hosts of heaven standing by him on his right hand and on his left. And the Lord said, who shall persuade Ahab that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one said on this matter, and another said on that matter. And there came forth a spirit, and stood before the Lord and said, I will persuade him. And the Lord said unto him, wherewith? And he said, I will go forth, and I will be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And he said, thou shalt persuade him, and prevail also. Go forth and do so. Now therefore, behold, Micaiah is still talking. The Lord hath put a lying spirit in the mouth of all these thy prophets. He looked at all of them and he said, they all have a lying spirit. And the Lord hath spoken evil concerning thee, Ahab. But Zedekiah, the son of Jehaniah, and I slaughtered at that time, went near and smote Micaiah on the cheek and said, which way went the Spirit of the Lord from me to speak unto thee? Smacked him in the mouth, just like they did with Jesus whenever they were torturing him. You remember how the soldiers would come up, punch him, say, where'd that come from? You know, blindfolded him. Who hit you? Prophesy, mocking him. That's what they did to Micaiah. They came up, smacked him. Okay, what the Spirit of the Lord tell you about that? Who did that? Micaiah said, behold, thou shalt see in that day when thou shalt go into an inner chamber to hide thyself. You are going to find out. The bottom line of all of that, there is a lying spirit in the mouth of all these prophets, verse 23. And there's a lying spirit in the mouth of many of America's pastors, preachers, and evangelists today. It is a lying spirit that possesses them to teach error and falsehood that are damning the souls of millions of people who follow them. Verse 26, and the king of Israel said, take Micaiah and carry him back unto Ammon the governor of the city, and to Joash the king's son, and say, thus saith the king, put this fellow in prison, and feed him with the bread of affliction and the water of affliction until I come in peace. Put him back in prison, feed him nothing but bread and water until I get back. And Micaiah said before he left the room, if thou return at all in peace, the Lord hath not spoken by me. And he said, hearken, O people, every one of you. If you come back, then I'm not a prophet of God. You're not coming back. And he looked to all the people and said, you listen to what I'm saying. And they took him back to prison. What character? What courage? What commitment to truth? What a man Micaiah was. He'd already suffered 3 years in prison. Now they put him back in prison and fed him with bread and water. The point here is, if a prophet's message doesn't cost him something, he's no true prophet. If it doesn't cost you something to speak the truth, then you're not speaking the truth. And you're not a prophet. Example, if the SPLC or the Human Rights Network or Planned Parenthood isn't saying anything bad about your pastor, that should tell you volumes about everything you need to know about your pastor. If the enemies of Christ are not attacking your pastor, there's a reason for it. They don't think your pastor is a threat to the forces of evil. And they leave him alone. Let him get up and start telling the truth, and he'll find the enemy coming out of the ground all around him. Notice this too. And I really like this, and I don't want you to miss this. Micaiah said, "If thou return at all in peace, the Lord hath not spoken by me." Think of all of these Schofield futurists, these dispensationalists, that keep pointing to newspaper headlines and saying, this is prophecy being fulfilled, like the billboard out there on Highway 2. This is prophecy being fulfilled. Page 1 of the newspaper. Page 2 of the newspaper. And yet, absolutely nothing comes of their prophecies. Nothing happens at all. Oh, this proves prophecy. Time goes by, and it proves that they were lying. Do you ever hear any of these prophecy geeks get up and say, oh, you know what? I told you 6 months ago that such and such an event was prophecy being foretold, and now we know that that had nothing to do with prophecy. See, I'm sorry I led you astray. Have you ever heard one get up and say that? No. They just move on to the next headline. Oh, this is prophecy. And then they sell a bunch of books, sell a bunch of tapes. This is prophecy. It comes and goes. Nothing happened. Throw the books away, throw the tapes away, outdated. Oh, here is prophecy being fulfilled. New books, new videos. And people in the TV audience and in the churches eat it up. Oh yeah, this is prophecy. Well, what about the prophecy 6 months ago? Same verse, same chapter, same book. Didn't happen. Oh, well, no, this is real. This is it right here. What was it, the definition of insanity? What is it? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And yet people fall for it. Micaiah said, if what I have said doesn't happen, I'm not a prophet. And these people that get up and use current events and headlines to say about this is prophecy, and it's not true, they are confirming to everyone that they are false prophets. When are you going to figure it out? How gullible you must be to continue to follow these phonies. Verse 29. So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, went up to Ramoth Gilead. You know, I don't know why Jehoshaphat went to all that trouble to get Micaiah to come and testify. He told the truth. Jehoshaphat knew that the other 400 were lying. Micaiah comes and tells him the truth. You're going to get slaughtered if you go up to war. And Jehoshaphat ignores Micaiah and he goes to war with Ahab. No explanation for stupidity. They're just, you can't legislate away stupidity. People that are stupid, they're going to be stupid no matter how many laws you pass. Jehoshaphat was literally stupid at this point. And the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, now there's your good buddy Ahab, Jehoshaphat. We are the same. I'm you as you are, and you as me are, and we're one, and you're one. And Ahab says to the king of Jehoshaphat, you know, I'm not going to wear my kingly attire when we go to battle. You know, that was back in the days when the kings had to go to battle with their men. I'd like to see that return. I'd like to see Joe Biden on the front lines in Ukraine and leading the troops. Let's do it. Let's go to battle. So Ahab says to Jehoshaphat, you know, I've got this really cool idea. I'm not going to wear my royal attire. I'm going to disguise myself and enter into the battle. But you, Jehoshaphat, you put on your kingly robes. Jehoshaphat, is the light going on yet? I'm going to disguise myself as an ordinary fellow. You put on your kingly robes and let's go to battle. Jehoshaphat still didn't get it. He still didn't get it. But the king of Syria commanded... Like I say, you can't do anything about stupidity. You just can't. I mean, everybody knows the king is the guy that gets the first. You know, everybody tries to kill the king, you win the war. Anyway, the king of Syria commanded his 32 captains, or they would be tantamount to generals, that had rule over his chariots, saying, now listen to what the king of Syria's strategy was. And this is, now you understand what Ahab did. Fight neither with small nor great, save only with the king of Israel, Ahab. Fellas, you focus all of your firepower, all of your forces on Ahab. And it came to pass, when the captains of the chariots saw Jehoshaphat, they said, surely it is Ahab. And they turned aside to fight against him, Jehoshaphat. And Jehoshaphat cried out. He was about to die. And it came to pass that the captains of the chariots perceived that it was not the king of Israel, and they turned back from pursuing him. It was only by the grace of God that Jehoshaphat survived that battle. God protected Jehoshaphat from himself, from his own compromise, from his own stupidity. God still protected this good man and didn't let him die. So they withdrew from pursuing Jehoshaphat. But he's the one that had the crown on. He's the one that had the robes on. Of course they were going to be targeting him. Where's Ahab? Well, he's disguised as a common soldier somewhere. And here's how it ends. A certain man from Syria drew a bow at a venture, at random. He was bored. You know, maybe in the course of the battle, he hadn't had an opportunity to kill anybody. You know, he hadn't shot his bow and arrow one time. His quiver still got all these arrows in it. You know, and some of the other guys, you know, they've been in the battle and they got mud on their face and blood and half their arrows are gone and, you know, they're limping along and he, you know, here he is and he's, you know, nothing's happening. He's bored. Man, now there's a lull in the battle. It looks like nothing's going to happen. And so he said, oh man, I gotta I got to shoot this bow at least. Maybe it was a new bow, maybe a new caliber, new, came out of Remington Arms, just last month. He just had to fire it. He was dying to fire it. So he just points it in the air, any direction. He just sees a bird or whatever and goes, boom, or lets it go. That's what that means. He drew a bow at a venture. And look what happened. And the arrow smote the king of Israel between the joints of the harness. It hit Ahab with a kill shot. He said unto the driver of his chariot, turn around, carry me out of the host, for I am wounded. And the battle increased that day. And the king was stayed up in his chariot against the Assyrians, and died at evening. And the blood ran out of the wound into the midst of the chariot. And there went a proclamation throughout the host about the going down of the sun, saying, every man to his city, every man to his own country. They all retreated. So the king died and was brought to Samaria, and they buried the king in Samaria. Ahab was going to disguise himself and escape the enemy. But he couldn't hide himself from God. So the king died. Verse 38. And one washed the chariot in the pool of Samaria, the blood off, of course, and the dogs licked up his blood, and they washed his armor according to the word of the Lord which he spoke. This is the fulfillment of Elijah's prophecy in 1 Kings chapter 21 in verse 19. This is what Elijah prophesied would happen to Ahab as a judgment from God for Ahab's murder and thievery of Naboth's life and property. 1 Kings 21:19. And thou shalt speak unto him, Ahab, saying, thus saith the Lord, hast thou killed, that would be Naboth, and also taken possession, that would be his property. And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, thus saith the Lord, in the place where dogs licked the blood of Naboth, shall dogs lick thy blood, even thine. Do you know enough about the story of Naboth? Ahab and Jezebel wanted Naboth's property, had lush vineyards. They offered to buy it from Naboth. Naboth said, it's been in my family for generations. It's not for sale. And so the king and queen conspired a plan to murder Naboth and seize his property in the name of the state. And that's exactly what they did. And that was what Elijah said was going to happen to Ahab for doing that. And that's exactly what happened as we read. Now, verse 39. Now, the rest of the acts of Ahab, and I include this because of this one statement. The rest of the acts of Ahab and all that he did, look at, and the ivory house which he made, and all the cities that he built, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel? He died, and the ivory house which he made meant absolutely nothing. There's a lot of people today living in ivory palaces who are on their way to a devil's hell. And all their stocks and bonds and money and wealth and ivory towers will mean nothing to their eternal soul. And by the way, God took care of Jezebel too. He didn't forget about her. 1 Kings chapter 21, verse 23, Elijah said, "And of Jezebel also saith the Lord, saying, the dogs shall eat Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel." So you read 2 Kings. If you keep reading the Kings, you go to 2 Kings chapter 9, and here's what you read. "And when he," this is King Jehu now, "was come in, he did eat and drink, and said, Go see now this cursed woman, Jezebel, and bury her." She'd already been killed. Jehu was the man that God used to bring judgment on Jezebel. She was still alive. She outlived Ahab. So Jehu comes in to town and takes care of Jezebel. They actually threw her off of the tower on top of the wall. That's how she died. And now he was drinking and eating and, having supper. And then he thinks and says, "Oh yeah, we need to bury Jezebel. Go now, this cursed woman, and bury her." She didn't deserve a burial, in all honesty. A burial signifies dignity. Burial signifies respect. That's why God commanded the children of Israel to bury their dead while the pagan nations were all burning their dead. And Christians have historically continued that respectful tradition of burying the dead. It's a sign of respect to the dead. It's a sign of honor to the dead. She didn't deserve that. But Jehu explained it. She is a king's daughter. She was a member of the royal family. So we're going to bury her. And they went to bury her, but they found no more of her than the skull and the feet and the palms of her hands. So the only thing that was left was her skull, her feet, and the bones of her feet and her hands. Wherefore they came again and told him, and he said, "This is the word of the Lord, which he spake by his servant Elijah the Tishbite, saying," 1 Kings 21:23, "In the portion of Jezreel shall dogs eat the flesh of Jezebel." So between the time that she fell off the wall and died and the time that Jehu got finished with supper, the dogs had come and eaten Jezebel completely to the bone, with only skull, hands, and feet remaining, just as Elijah prophesied would happen. You see, true prophets speak true prophecies that come to pass. And I'll just say here, one day, there'll be a just recompense to these evil men and women in government, and those who are the paid puppets of government, who are murdering innocent people, who are stealing the properties of innocent people, who are ruining people's lives and stealing their fortunes. One day, God will recompense as surely as Naboth was avenged of Ahab. I want to close with one verse from the pen of the Apostle Paul that I think is so appropriate to end this message on. And I want you to listen very carefully to what Paul said in Philippians chapter 1, verse 28. "And in nothing terrified by your adversaries." In nothing terrified by your adversaries, which is to them an evident token of perdition. Their animosity and attacks against truth are a testimony to their coming perdition. But to you, of salvation. Your love and defense of truth is evidence of your salvation and that of God. So let me just read the verse in closing. Philippians 1:28. And in nothing terrified by your adversaries, which is to them an evident token of perdition, but to you of salvation, and that of God. Thank you. Let's stand for a word of prayer.